Good afternoon. Welcome to a presentation of the Virginia World War II Heritage Alliance. I'm Clay Mountcastle. I'm the director of the Virginia War Memorial in Richmond, Virginia. And it's a real pleasure and honor for me to be part of this program today, where we bring together curators from member institutions of the World War II Heritage Alliance. A little bit about the Alliance. The Alliance is a collaborative between nonprofits, museums, and other organizations in the Commonwealth of Virginia that preserve and promote the study of World War II history. Throughout the year, what we try and do is make sure that visitors to our institution know about all the other member institutions of the World War II Heritage Alliance. And that way we can better achieve our own mission by making sure everybody knows about all the different wonderful places to go and see and learn about World War II within the Commonwealth. So today we have a special look at what these member institutions offer to their visitors by going kind of into the collections or finding things from the collections of each member organization, some things that probably have a bit of interesting details or an interesting story behind it. So we'll go ahead and get started right away. And our first curator we'll be visiting with today is Tonya Dietrock of the Hampton Roads Naval Museum. So we'll turn it on over to Tonya.
Great. Thank you very much for having us. We're really excited about contributing to this today. And I'll start right off with my visuals for everybody. We are basically located in Norfolk, Virginia, and we share the campus with Nauticus. And the artifact I would want to highlight today is a life vest and a mess kit that we have from World War II. And it has a lot of very interesting details that make it a very exciting artifact for us. And we're pleased to be able to share it with you today. We are one of 10 museums under the Naval History and Heritage Command, and we are on the second floor of the Nauticus building, and our admission is free. Currently, we're not open due to COVID restrictions, but we expect to be open soon. And we really look forward to getting everybody in there that we've missed through the last several months. So primarily, we interpret the history of the US Navy in and around Hampton Roads from the American Revolution through present day. We currently have an immersive exhibit called the 10,000 Day War at Sea, the US Navy in Vietnam from 1950 to 1975. We have a Facebook page, which is noted there. And in addition to that, we have a vigorous education program, a large group of active volunteers, and we have also active military come for ceremonies, including re-enlistments, promotions, retirements, and they are expanding our education outreach now to include more material for the fleet and active duty sailors. And it is not advancing. There we go. So we have recently, in 2013, approximately 2,400 artifacts were accessioned into our collection from the National Museum of the Supply Corps. It was a Navy museum. It was in Athens, Georgia, and it closed because of BRAC. And one of the artifacts that we accepted was a shadow box that contained a life jacket and pieces from an aluminum Navy mess kit. And like many of the artifacts that all of us get, and the Supply Corps Museum got this, was through the donation from a private citizen. The shadow box has been donated by its original owner, and that person was Maury Notch, who was a retired captain in the Supply Corps. And he initially was serving on the USS Hornet CV-8, which is known for launching the Doolittle raid on Tokyo, the Battle of Midway, and during the Solomon Island campaign, she was at Guadalcanal. And then during the Battle of Santa Cruz in October of 1942, she was damaged beyond recovery by torpedoes and dive bombers. And at that time, Notch was on the Hornet, and it was sunk, and he was among the sailors who evacuated to safety. And according to the donor, this life jacket and mess kit went with him during that event. We know that the U.S. Hornet remains on the ocean floor and was just recently located by the Paul Taylor Group in the exploration in the South Pacific, looking for many of the U.S. Navy's sunken craft from World War II. So on October 24th, 1944, almost 2 years to the day later, Maury Notch was aboard the USS Princeton, and known as the Fighting Lady, she supported the occupation of Baker Island. She was involved in raids and the subsequent invasions of Macon and Tarawa. And during the key naval engagements known as the Battle of Leyte Gulf, the Princeton was attacked by the Japanese and burned for so long and so brightly that the US Navy decided to torpedo her to keep her from becoming a beacon to the enemy at night when they were still under attack. So what's really particularly fun about this artifact is that it was not only witness to at least two very significant events of World War II, two very significant ships that we know about, but it has some nice smaller details that curators and people that want to display these things really find to be really nice bonuses. This is marked directly with the owner's initials and last name, M.A. Notch, which you can see written there. It gives us that association to that individual person. In addition to that, we have a confirmed date. We always want to make sure that the object we're looking at is actually a valid object, and we look for confirming details. We do have the original manufacturer's stamp, which dates it to June of 1942, which does predate the event of the Hornet sinking. We also have the personal connection that comes with people's use of the artifact after the event. And on the bottom of the mess canister, there's a handwritten note which reads, "Used this as a survivor off the USS Hornet," and it's dated October 26, 42. And it also notes a location of Noumea, New Caledonia, which was a critical supply center and a place for ships to pull into port in the South Pacific during World War II. So we have a name, we have a date, we have historic events, we have locations. There's not a whole lot more that you can ask for in an artifact. Really gives us a really nice rounded package to interpret this for any kind of museum exhibit or artifact study that we want to do. So what are our plans for this artifact? First off, we need to consider its conservation and stabilizing it. It is made of mixed materials. We have textiles, we have the waterproof lining that's in the life jacket, we have the tubing that is starting to show some cracking and some dryness, and we have metal buckles on the strap. So all of those things need to be assessed and conserved, and we need to find a plan for longer term conservation of the object so that we can protect it long term. We would also like more research on the experience of the men that were involved, including Captain Notch's experience. We do have his recounting that these objects were there, but we don't really know much about his role on the ship, what his timeline was relevant to the overall timeline of the attacks and the sinking of the ships, and what that experience was like afterwards. Unfortunately, Captain Notch is no longer living, but there are possibilities of finding similar accounts and documents and things that might flesh that out were we to put this on exhibit. So one of the potential uses for this, just as an example, could be a new exhibit that we're planning for 2025. We're looking at focusing on the experience of the members of the US Navy through using artifacts and firsthand accounts. We're working on growing our oral history library and looking through primary sources. And we do want to address the visiting public as a general audience, but we also want to expand the active duty of the U.S. Navy as our audience as well, because we really want to create an exhibit that allows them to make a connection through events through time. And so the artifact that we showed you today is really a moment in time, but it also resonates through other experiences that people in the service may have, or their families might be interested in knowing about. So that's just one of many artifacts that we have. And thank you very much. I was very happy to have a chance to show that one off. It's one of my favorites.
All right, Tonya, thank you very much. If everybody gets a chance to head down to the Hampton Roads Naval Museum once they reopen soon for visitors, look forward to doing that. Now we're going to head on over to the Virginia Holocaust Museum here in downtown Richmond and visit with the assistant curator there, Allie Kalinda. Allie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for having me here today. I'm excited to share with you a little bit about the Virginia Holocaust Museum and our collection. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And so we are located in Richmond, Virginia. We do not have an admissions fee, but we do ask that if you are coming, we are open during COVID, but that you go onto our website and sign up for a time slot, because we are limiting the number of people who we allow into the museum at any one point. And that's all available at our website for you to look at. So today, our mission at the museum is to employ the history of the Holocaust to educate and inspire others to fight prejudice and indifference. And what sets us apart from other Holocaust museums is that we focus on the collections of survivors, rescuers, liberators, and witnesses of the Holocaust who called Virginia home. So in the case of our liberators, they could have been born and raised in Virginia, often United States soldiers. And in the case of our survivors and rescuers, they typically immigrated to Virginia after the war. So today, I have for you this postcard from the collection of Private First Class David Golden. And if you look at the postcard, you can tell that a lot of it is written in German. And that's because Private First Class Golden was taken prisoner of war at the Battle of the Bulge at the end of January 1945. So you can see in the bottom left-hand corner here that he was assigned a prisoner number. And this postcard is addressed to his wife, Rosalind Golden, who was living right here in Richmond. So there's that Virginia connection. And it's postmarked February 12th, 1945. So if you turn the card over, you find a little bit more information here. And at the top center there, you can tell he was a prisoner of Stalag 9B in Bad Orb, Germany. And David has dated this postcard January 24th, 1945. So it was actually sent several weeks after he had written it. And if you read the text there, it seems like a fairly benign postcard home, considering he's a prisoner of war. So he's writing to his wife. He's essentially saying, I feel fine. I'm a prisoner. You can send me packages or letters through the Red Cross, and take care of yourself and their son. But we know that shortly after David had filled out this postcard, the German authorities actually called for all Jewish prisoners to identify themselves. So they had been asked to bring 350 soldiers to Berga concentration camp, and they wanted to send the Jewish soldiers. Now, because United States soldiers wore dog tags, these were actually used to identify their religion. So if you were Jewish, for instance, your dog tag would be stamped with an H for Hebrew. So it was actually really hard for soldiers to hide their religion in this instance. And many of the Christian soldiers said, don't reveal yourself, we'll protect you. But they had to find a way to either get rid of those dog tags if they still had them on them without the German authorities knowing. And in many cases, Jewish soldiers ethnically did not want to deny their faith as well. So David Golden and about 100 other Jewish soldiers stepped forward, but they didn't reach the quota of the 350 soldiers needed to be sent to Berga. So the SS officers went around and they picked out other soldiers who they believed to either look Jewish or be troublesome prisoners. And they were all sent to Berga concentration camp, where they were used as slave labor to build an underground armaments factory. Now, this postcard seems relatively benign, and it would have been read by censors, so it would have been censored, and it's possible David was just hiding from his wife what he was truly experiencing. But we know for a fact that Berga concentration camp had terrible conditions, and many of the soldiers sent there died from being overworked or from malnutrition. It wouldn't be until 2 months later, at the beginning of April, that these soldiers were actually driven out by the SS away from Berga and away from the approaching Allied forces on a forced march. And then it was another couple weeks, the end of the month, until they were liberated. So when David Golden was liberated, he weighed 85 pounds, he had a fractured skull, and he ended up spending several months in an army hospital recuperating from malnutrition. So this postcard here sort of exemplifies what over 500,000 Jewish men and women who joined the United States Armed Forces experienced at this point. Now, while conditions and risks were high for all US soldiers, not only were Jewish soldiers fighting in this war, but they were also fighting the anti-Semitism that was rampant in the world at this point in time. So thank you for allowing me to share that with you today.
All right, Allie, thank you very much. All right, now let's head on over to the Macarthur Memorial and speak with the curator there, Corey Thornton.
Thank you, Clay. And hello, everybody. Forgive me if I sound a little scripted. It's been a little while. I'm the curator here. My name's Corey Thornton, the curator here from Macarthur Memorial. We're a museum and research center dedicated to preserving and presenting the story of General of the Army Douglas MacArthur. We also pay tribute to the millions of men and women who served with General MacArthur in World War I, World War II, and the Korean War. The memorial itself, centered here in downtown Norfolk, is there's three of us. That is 3 buildings, 3 facilities, one of which is the memorial itself, essentially our museum, our archives and research center, and our visitor center, where I'm located. We do a lot of great things. We reopened in July of last year. We're following all social distancing practices, so please feel free to come down and see some of the things, at least one of the things that you will hear about today. So our choice of artifact for today is a pen, but not just any pen. It was actually this pen. Let's see if we can see it. I'm doing a little show and tell today. So this is the pen, everybody can see, and I'll show that again. This pen, it was truly mightier than the sword, as you're going to find out. It was one of several pens used to sign the instrument of surrender by the Japanese forces and Allied forces at the conclusion of World War II. This pen, produced by the L.E. Waterman Company, was one of 6 pens used by General MacArthur. He signed and accepted the Japanese surrender on behalf of the Allies on September 2nd, 1945. The pen itself, a little history, is a Waterman's 100-year pen, the model, if you will. It's one of 4 purchased in Manila by General MacArthur's aide, Brigadier General Courtney Whitney. The Waterman's pen was guaranteed to last the test of time. It was a new type of material. The Waterman's was transitioning from the use of celluloid for their pens, which tend to break down quicker over time. And they're moving over to a newer material at the time called lucite, which was developed by DuPont. So celluloid was pretty well known for degrading, so they wanted to stay with the times. Well, by the time of 1945, these pens were in use, purchased again by Brigadier General Courtney Whitney. Macarthur signed his name to two versions of the surrender documents, that is the Allied version and the Japanese version. On each document, Macarthur used one pen for each segment of his name, and there were 3 segments. So, so I don't complicate this. What he did was he used the pen to write Douglas. Then he used put that one down, took another pen, and he also handed these off, as you'll see. He used another pen to write Mac, gave that one away or set it down, and then used the last pen, or not the last pen, but used the third pen to write Arthur. And he did this twice. Again, one per document. So after signing with each pen, Macarthur gave one of these Waterman's pens to General Wainwright. In the video, I'm sure you can look that up on YouTube, but we also show it here in the memorial. He goes over his shoulder, hands that to General Wainwright. The other pen, he actually, after signing, he hands that to British Lieutenant General Percival. Macarthur took the other 2 pens, which are now in the collection of the Macarthur Memorial. But prior to where they came to us now, initially these pens were left on the table, the surrender table, after he had signed. Admiral Sir Bruce Fraser actually took a cue from Macarthur, and as he signed, he handed a pen, one to each of his aides, and he just used 2 pens. So Macarthur had intended to keep these pens, and so when he heard about what had occurred, he actually sent his own aide to go get the pens back from the British aides that Fraser had passed the pens off to. I'm sure it was very awkward for that particular aide of Macarthur, but he managed to get those 2 pens back. And that is what we have here in our collection today. We have one in storage, and one is actually on exhibit in Gallery 5 of the Memorial. Come see for yourself. So after all this, there was another pen which belonged to General Whitney, Brigadier General Whitney, and it was returned to him and is still with the family at this time. The last pen was actually an orange Parker dual fold pen, which belonged to the general's wife, Jean. And it was returned to her right after the ceremony. Unfortunately, her pen was stolen from her residence several years later, so we do not have that one, but we do have a reproduction version. And so the point of all this, and it was, the pens were only part of the ceremony. Macarthur held the ceremony. Truman had ordered the Missouri, to be the staging area for the signing of the surrender. So Macarthur wanted to make it clear in no uncertain terms that the war officially ended with the ceremony. The surrender in Europe had occurred a few months before. It was more under private and circumstances, but reported. Macarthur, and in his typical style of oratory and presentation, and for duty, honor, and country, he ensured that the surrender of Japan at Tokyo Bay was very public, although only immediately open to all the military personnel in that area. But it was recorded and reported to the rest of the world thereafter. So again, we are here, the Macarthur Memorial. I've said it plenty of times during this presentation. I hope you can come on down and see us. We are free admission. And if you want more information, we have a website like everyone else. So thank you for the opportunity to present today, and come and see us.
All right, Corey, thank you very much. All right. Normally, if we want to travel to the National D-Day Memorial out in Bedford, we got to jump on Route 360 and drive about 2 hours out there. But through the wonders of technology, we can just turn it over instantly to John Long, the Director of Education out there at Bedford at the National D-Day War Memorial.
Thank you, Clay. It's great to be here and show off an artifact in our collection, or actually a collection of artifacts in our collection, which may not be all that visually interesting, but they pack an enormous audio impact, as we will see. Got to tell a little bit of the backstory to this collection. And it begins with this man here, Albert Stern, who was an executive with a New York company that developed and marketed a new type of audio recorder during World War II known as the record graph. And here we have part of one of the record graph machines, although even though it's not complete, it is, as far as I know, the largest surviving piece of one of these machines. Of course, it doesn't function because the most of it's gone, but this is the record graph, which looks like a big clunky piece of machinery to us today, but in World War II, this was state of the art and enormously portable. It's kind of heavy, but compared to what came before, it was lighter, it was more portable, it was more reliable, it recorded far better sound. And the reason for that was the technology of Hammer tape, like American tape, which looked like this. This is some World War II Hammer tape in the collection. And if you look at it and say it looks like film tape, it really was. It was more or less movie recording tape, but it only recorded audio, not video as well. And because of that technology, it was this was a far better sound recorder than anything that had been developed. And since it was portable, it had immediate military and war correspondence uses. In fact, the Navy purchased several of these and loaned them to war correspondents so that the sounds of battle could be recorded for training purposes, but also so that war correspondents could tell in real time or close to real time what was happening on battlefields. Well, Albert Stern continued on his career through the 60s and 70s. Eventually, he passed away. His house was sold years later to a man named Mr. Campbell, who found in storage at the house boxes of Mr. Stern's mementos, including this piece of the record graph machine, some Hammer tape, and some that he realized had recordings on them. The only problem was by then, there was no way to listen to these recordings. Not long after World War II, this kind of tape was replaced by the cassette tapes. Some of us are old enough to remember. And so the record graph had long since disappeared. No way to recover this material until Mr. Campbell made contact with a sound engineer in England who had reverse engineered a record graph and was able to take these boxes of material and create digital files of them. And at that point, Mr. Campbell realized what he had: recordings of interviews, recordings of music, in some cases, recordings of men like Eisenhower and Churchill giving speeches, but also a recording that was deemed one of the most important ones of World War II. It was George Hicks, and that is this gentleman here, using a record graph to interview some sailors. George Hicks was on D-Day on the deck of a ship called the USS Ancon, and recorded a German aerial attack on that ship. It was played in the United States on June 7th or 8th fairly quickly, and replayed for many, many days afterwards, because for the first time ever, people could at home listen to the sounds of battle in not exactly real time, but in very close to it by their standards. Mr. Campbell, when he realized this, did a lot of research into the history of this, and eventually donated the collection to the National D-Day Memorial in 2019 in honor of the 75th anniversary of D-Day. So my colleague Sarah is going to play, share screen and then play some of this audio for us of the attack. It's a little bit scratchy, but that's because it came from World War II. But imagine the impact of listening to this if you are at home, you've got a son or a brother or a husband in the battle, and here you are listening to the actual event. If it doesn't come through very well for you, it is on our webpage, dday.org, and you can go and listen to it there. So any luck, Sarah? Can we get it up?
Let me for a second.
Just we're having a little bit of computer difficulty here, but we'll get it up as soon as we can. I'll also mention, while she is trying to get it to cooperate, Mr. Stern, after World War II, was very involved in using recording technology for espionage and worked with the FBI and things like wiretapping technology. So he remained very prominent. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so you heard a little bit of it. At the very end of the recording, you hear an anti-aircraft gunner in the background yell, "I won the case of Scotch." Apparently there was a bet on the ship for the first man to bring down a German plane, got a case of Scotch. So it's a great piece of recording. Although there were copies of it made, what we appear to have is possibly the original one made on D-Day or just a little bit after midnight on June 7th. Maybe it's an early dubbed copy. There's no real way to tell, but it is certainly one of the most historic pieces in our collection. So I invite you to come by the National D-Day Memorial, especially now in spring when things are beautiful, and come into our educational building where we have pieces of the record graph collection on display and learn more about this important moment in history. So thanks, and back to you, Clay.
Well, thank you, John and Sarah out there in Bedford. Not only giving us something to see, but a little something to hear from the collections as well. And so now we'll virtually jump in the car, head on out over to Roanoke, take a right turn onto I-81 and speed up, well, not speed, but drive up I-81 through the valley up to the Stonewall Brigade Museum, and we'll talk to the executive director of the Stonewall Brigade Museum, Jimmy Kilbourne. Jimmy.
Hey, hello, everyone. Thanks, Clay, for driving up to see us today on your computer. Today, we're going to highlight a man we have some of his items in our collection. What you see on your screen instead of my face is a much better thing to look at, the beautiful Medal of Honor. March has the Medal of Honor Day within the month, and we thought we would highlight the person who won the Medal of Honor. This Medal of Honor belonged to Frank Perigore. He was awarded that during World War II. He was a Virginia National Guardsman, joined before World War II started as an underage teenager, was mobilized in 1941 with the entire 29th Division, trained in North Carolina and Florida, went to England for more training, and landed on D-Day as a sergeant. 2 days later, on June 8th, his battalion, made up of several companies of the 116th Infantry Regiment, were stuck in a narrow roadway across a flooded area outside the little village of Grand Camp, France, which is just a couple miles west of Vierville, where the 116th Regiment had landed on D-Day 2 days before. The entire battalion was stuck. A couple of tanks had been knocked out, and Frank's company commander, a man from Front Royal, Virginia, was killed, as well as some of the members of Frank's squad. I assume, I'm putting together, that perhaps he was kind of hopping mad, and he screams, "I'll go get them." He makes his way up the hill into the German trenches and kills several German soldiers, takes about 30 prisoners, and knocks out a couple machine gun nests and some guns that were firing on the unit, and clears the way. And so that Medal of Honor was placed by his family. It is his. It has his name inscribed on the back, and it's on pretty much a permanent display here in our museum in Verona, Virginia. What isn't on display, and we're going to show you some slideshows if Morgan can share those on her screen for everybody, are two more of Frank's medals. Now, Frank was a very friendly farm boy from near Charlottesville, Virginia. And you wouldn't know it that he was 2 times the hero. The medals that you see, everyone might recognize the Medal of Honor, which is, the Purple Heart Medal. Has the bust of George Washington on it. It is purple. It has a purple ribbon with white stripes on the side. You can see it there. That is Frank's. It has his name inscribed on the back, also placed here by his family. That was awarded to the family for the wounds that Frank received that actually killed him about a week later after earning the Medal of Honor. He never knew that he'd earned the Medal of Honor. The other medal that you see on the screen that you don't see very often is called the Soldier's Medal. It's the red, white, and blue striped medal with the American eagle in sort of an Art Deco or Works project type eagle fashion on the front there. That also has Frank's name inscribed on the back, also given to us by his family. The Soldier's Medal is the American military medal for valor or bravery awarded to a service member during peacetime or non-combat operations. Frank earned that medal as a leader in North Carolina. They were training during the winter. A truck hit some ice, slid off the road, turned upside down in a kind of a small canal area, and there were men trapped inside the cargo area with the collapsed canvas and wood bows of the truck that had turned over on its side. Frank jumps into the icy water with his pocket knife, cuts the canvas open, and rescues some soldiers who were in the process of drowning and saves their lives. And he was awarded that medal for bravery. Frank, we think, is one of less than 6 people, perhaps, maybe less than 3 in the entire history of Valor Awards for the United States military that has both medals for bravery of the highest order. One for peacetime, the Soldier's Medal, and one for combat operations, the Medal of Honor. Now, these 2 medals you're looking at aren't shown in our exhibit. That's why we wanted to bring them out and let everybody know that Frank was a special guy, unique, rare individual, and we have these other objects that you wouldn't normally see. Next slide, Morgan, if you would. So here's the Medal of Honor that is Frank's. It's on display. It's normally under a glass case and sealed so people can't get to it, but you can come visit it and look at it at the museum. And there's one more slide, Morgan, if you would show that one. It's just a close-up of what the Medal of Honor looks like. It's a neck drape. That's what that blue ribbon is that goes around your neck. Of course, the American eagle and the blue field of the stars, reminiscent of the ensign, perhaps, of a Navy flag, or just the blue field that people show to represent America. You don't really get to see them close up. You don't get to see them very often. They're a highly controlled item by the government. So if you'd like to see a real Medal of Honor awarded to a Virginian who served during World War II and who was kind of a cut above the rest, having earned both the highest medals for bravery, come see us at our museum in Verona, Virginia. Now, if you come, last little bit I'm going to give you here. If you come in the future, you might see a name change. Our museum is getting ready to expand and take on more history relative to Virginia. And we're going to change our name to the 29th Division Museum as we look to the past members of the 29th Division, the current members of the 29th Division, and the 29th Division now encompasses over 12 states of citizen soldiers. And so we want to include all the other states and all the other soldiers who are now part of the 29th Division. Hope to see you at the museum. Thank you very much.
All right, Jimmy, thank you. And we are about to round out our whirlwind tour of some of these member institutions and the World War II Heritage Alliance by speaking to the curator right here at the Virginia War Memorial, Jesse Smith. Take it away, Jesse.
All right, thank you, Clay. I'm going to share my screen. And is that coming up clearly for you guys?
You're good.
All right. Hello, my name is Jesse Smith, and like Clay mentioned, I am the curator for the Virginia War Memorial right here in Richmond, Virginia. And before I show you what is one of my favorite artifacts, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the War Memorial. Right after World War II, there was a desire to build a memorial and house the names from Virginia who were killed in action during that war. So a site was chosen here in Richmond with a commanding view of the James and the Richmond skyline. Construction was about to begin when the Korean War broke out. Plans were put on hold until after the conclusion of fighting, and after the armistice was signed, construction resumed and the Virginia War Memorial opened to the public. The memorial included the Shrine of Memory, which is shown here, and it was made from glass and marble, and the names of those killed in World War II and Korea were added. It also had a reflecting pool, which you can see in the second picture here with the bugler, an internal flame, which you cannot see, unfortunately, and a small visitor center and auditorium was also located on site. In 1980, the Vietnam section was added and dedicated, and in that addition, they added columns and more stone and more glass and the names who fell in that conflict. In the late 1990s, the War Memorial fell into disrepair. The brackets holding the glass and the stones were starting to fail. The reflecting pool no longer held water, and the eternal flame hadn't burned in a number of years. It was during this time, it was decided that the War Memorial should be fixed back up, and we should have both educational programs and exhibits here at the War Memorial. And they decided to do this in 3 phases. The first phase was to rebuild the shrine. And the second phase was to build an education center. And the third phase was to build a parking deck, expanded office space, more exhibit space. And I'm going to show you a picture of it here. And this is how the War Memorial looks today. It was also during this time that the research library was moved over to the new space, and we have a distance learning center added as well that allows us to do programs such as this. The parking deck allows us to house, actually have parking on site. Before we only had a limited amount of parking, and it also allowed us to expand our exhibits and other programs. Our exhibits and education programs cover from the American Revolution till today, but our primary focus is from World War II onward. Okay, what am I going to show? Well, usually when I am asked what my favorite artifact is, I tend to answer something along the lines of the last one that came in or the one we haven't gotten yet. Basically, I tend to answer a really easy answer to a very hard question. The artifact that I'm about to present was chosen not because it was owned by anybody famous, or is particularly rare, or is even a pristine example of one, but rather the story that goes behind it. Here, I'm going to show it to you now. This is a World War II era M3 flak helmet from our collection. These were primarily used by the U.S. Army Air Corps bomber crews during World War II. By the sheer nature of their mission, air crews were particularly subject to anti-aircraft fire and flak batteries and fighter aircraft protecting the targets. This was especially the case when we started the strategic daylight bombing of targets in Germany and elsewhere in Europe. The casualty among bomber crews was high, mainly for flak, and that's why the U.S. Ordnance Department came up with this helmet. They're designed to fit over the soft leather flight. Ear flaps can go over the earphones and communications equipment. These are interesting because if you can fold the flaps up, and they can look like Mickey Mouse. And names for these helmets are the Mickey Mouse helmet. But it's not, it's actually the other side of the helmet that makes this one of my favorites. That is in fact a bullet hole. More specifically, it's a millimeter ME-109 and the remarkable thing is the gentleman who was, and here's a picture of Lewis J. Jennings holding the M3 flak helmet that I just showed. And the neat about this photo is it was taken, and what is also really neat is he was allowed to take it home. Normally helmet issue equipment and you had to turn it in or it was left in the plane after it was used. Lewis was a Virginian. He was born here, or he's born outside of Virginia in 1920. Peters. He worked in a textile mill in Hopewell, Virginia. He joined the U.S. Army Air Corps, and he flew a total of 68 missions with the 57th Bomb Wing as a turret gunner on a B-25 Mitchell. This is a B-25 Mitchell, by the way, and his position was right here. This is the upper turret on a B-25. I'm going to show you another thing. Here's a close-up of the bullet hole. It was on his 61st mission on a bombing run over Italy when he said he had the scare of his life. He said that the ME-109 bullet passed through the turret right above his head. And luckily for Jennings, he walked away without a scratch, and that is incredible. What is also remarkable, if you look at the bullet hole itself, you could tell by the damage that was done is the bullet, when it hit, started to tumble. And the fact that he didn't get hit, he didn't even get a scratch is truly, truly remarkable, because that bullet was now starting to spin end over end. And what is also really kind of cool about the helmet and the photo is we also have this. This is actually a transcribed interview from 1944 when it happened. And in the interview, he tells the whole tale of like how many times the plane was hit. He said that the plane itself had 15 bullet holes in it. It disabled his guns. It knocked out the nose canopy, and that the co-pilot and bombardier were both injured during the run from the ME-109. He said, luckily no one was killed and the plane landed safely. And he also stated that the bullet, when it passed through the helmet, went through his flying cap. And I thought that was kind of neat. I wish I had the flying cap too. that would be kind of a neat addition to it, but I think he got a new flying cap after that. And here's a picture of a few of Jennings' crew members. I think this is these are some enlisted personnel who were also in the same squadron as him, because these are actually this would represent actually more people who are on the plane. But this is Jennings right here, and I believe these were the enlisted men who were with him. After the war, Jennings went on to marry his war bride. He actually married a British lady. He brought her back to the United States and they married. He worked for VDOT until his death in 1970. And what's also really interesting is his son, Lewis Jennings Jr., would join the Air Force and he would serve in the Vietnam War. And then his grandson with the same name would go on to join the U.S. Air Force and be stationed in both Iraq and Afghanistan. So I thought that was really interesting that, you know, he was the start of a legacy of U.S. for, you know, first the U.S. Army Air Corps and then the U.S. Air Force. I really like this item. And if you would like to come see it, it is currently on exhibit in our flight jacket display that we have. We feature, it's two sides of a hallway. It has jackets from both World War II and then after World War II. And then at the end, we have a little bit of equipment that they would wear along with their flight jacket, including Jennings helmet. And this is actually one of my second favorite, and this is Charlie Miller's Crusher Cap, which is also a really cool item. We are open, so if you go to our website, you can check out our hours of operation. And you know, we do have to practice social distancing and whatnot, just like everybody else. But I would invite you to come to the War Memorial and check out this and other exhibits that we have. Clay?
All right, thank you, Jesse. And again, thank you to all of our curators and directors that joined us for the program to share a little bit about what their member institution has to offer to those people that want to visit those member institutions. Again, the World War II Heritage Alliance is a collection of institutions, museums, and organizations that preserve and promote the study of World War II history around the Commonwealth of Virginia. If you want to know more about the Heritage Alliance, its mission, and its member organizations, you can always check out the website at wwiiheritagealliance.org, and you'll learn some more information about what you've seen today. And hopefully you can get on the road like we did today, not virtually, but for real, and go out and visit these various institutions once they reopen. As you heard, many of them are open. So get out there, particularly as the weather's getting better in the spring and summertime, and go learn a little bit about World War II history and all these great, wonderful member institutions around the state. So again, thank you to all of our participants. Thank you for everybody for tuning in today, and go out there and learn some World War II history. Thank you very much.